So good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for season 2, episode 2 of May I Ask a Question, where Chris and I pick questions off of Stack Overflow, reproduce the problems, and talk a little bit about some best practices in Ember and web development in general. So this week, we've picked out a couple questions that we might take a look at. Chris, do you want to share what some of those are?
Sure, absolutely. This is here's what I prepared earlier moment.
Excellent.
Okay, so this is the first one that you sent me about somebody having some trouble with an in-repo add-on, which is an interesting concept in its own right, writing public files on build, causing an endless loop on serve.
Yep. And
it's a bit of a long description, but do you want to give a quick summary?
Yeah, so this person is using, was it Tree for Public, to look
Yes.
up the tree and then add some things to it. And so one of the reasons why we picked this question out is that working with Tree for Public and Tree for Vendor and all that in an add-on is something that isn't currently well described in guides and tutorials yet. But they're important concepts for building add-ons as well as building apps. I know I've done something with those, don't even remember what, when I was building apps. And so I asked Chris if, he had some clues about what was going on here because I would like to learn as well.
Yeah.
The other question that, sorry, go ahead.
Well, the reason why I'm kind of drawn to this question as well is because I have been doing a lot of stuff with add-ons recently because of all of the Empress work that I've been doing.
Yeah.
So like Empress blog and GuideMaker, the thing that's powering the Ember guides, like there's one or two interesting tricks that make it kind of work, and they're all things that already existed in the Ember add-on APIs. So things like Tree for Public just being used in a slightly weird way. But they've been around for years for people to build interesting and cool stuff on. So it's kind of exciting for me.
The other question I'm looking at right now is there's another one that says, why isn't Corber building for my Ember project? And in the background, while Chris is kind of working on the add-on Tree for Public question, I'm going to be trying to install and run an Ember app using Corber because I have always wanted to try this out. I went to a talk by the creator, one of the creators of Corber, and I thought it was just the coolest. So what Corber does is it lets you use the same code base for your web app as well as native apps. And you can put all different types of front-end applications inside of Corber. So, whether you want to work in Ember or React or Vue or Angular or other things, there's plugins and stuff to make it possible. And I think it's very powerful, this idea that as web developers, you don't have to have separate teams to build your native app as well. So I'm going to run a whole bunch of NPM installs behind the background, and if I get anywhere with that, we'll come back around to this question. But I think we should kick off with Tree for Public.
I'm glad that you're doing that because I'm not sure my computer would survive streaming and installing the Cordova stuff and.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dig into this question. So I might make this a bit bigger so that people can read it better on the stream. Ooh, I think that's a bit better. And if anybody wants to participate in chat, please do feel free. I always like to hear suggestions from the audience. Okay, so what do we got? I'm having difficulty with my in-repo add-on building app dear public. Write out a JSON file. So let me have a look. What is he trying to do? Public trees, if public tree. Trees are push blah. save settings file. This.pub settings file. This.settings. Right side the JSON. I think so. There's two things that I'm looking at this here, and there's two things that seem slightly odd to me. I've tried writing the JSON tree for public. The problem Ember serve watcher to text. Yeah, that makes sense. Saving to public. After build detects. Okay. So the thing that I think is going wrong here is that what they seem to be doing in their tree for public is that they're writing a settings file, so JSON, out into the public folder in a Ember app. And here's my sandbox from last week. So the public folder, so they're writing a JSON file in here as part of the build, and then they're like selecting that file to make sure it's included, so that when it's built, it goes into dist. So anything that's kind of in public, as you can see here, robot.text gets included in dist here. But because they're writing into public and then including it in the build, it's essentially telling the Ember app, the watcher, the thing that's like, oh, if you change any files, rebuild my Ember app. It's telling that it's getting caught in a loop. So it's like, write a file to disk and include it, and then Ember rebuilds, and it's writing a file to disk, Ember rebuilds, and so on and so forth. So the first thing that I notice here is that actually, unless you're extending something else, unless you're overriding an existing add-on, Ember add-on, you don't need to call super tree for public, because I think the default one is just empty. So you can kind of ignore this entire first bit. And the second thing that you need to know here is, if you want to write something out in Broccoli, you need to use Broccoli Writer. And I have been writing a lot of Broccoli, and I still have to look up everything. Go ahead.
So you mentioned that they're writing stuff to the public tree and then using include to get it into the dist, but I thought that whatever is in the public tree is automatically included as part of the build. So what's the purpose of, why wouldn't you just write the thing to public and stop there?
So
because they're overriding this?
Well, this is the thing. The bit that I don't really understand here, because the question is mostly talking about the what, the kind of what I'm trying to achieve here, as opposed to the why. I'm assuming that this save settings file function is maybe taking some of the settings, in this case, this.settings, and writing like a subset of them. So maybe it's essentially, it needs something dynamic to write that file, which is interesting, because that's a lot of the time we actually do that in things Empress related. So I think, let me see if I can remember one that we do this for. It's actually one that hasn't really been talked about much, but I'm writing like an Empress based tool chain for the Ember RFCs, so we can like do that in Ember, which is nice. And one of the things that you need is like a list of all of the RFCs, so it needs to go read all the files off disk and then write like a JSON that says here's the list of all of the RFCs, so you get that nice table of contents on the left. Oh, we have Edward Faulkner joining us, which is nice. Hey, thanks for joining the chat. What do we have? Oh, that's interesting. public folder will be ignored. Oh, that's a correction of something that I was thinking. I've never called this .super when I'm doing tree for public, so maybe I'm causing problems for other people down further in the chain. But yeah, I agree that the thing here, the save settings file, is suspicious. This is the thing where I think that's writing it out into the public folder. So we need to change this around a little bit. Let me just really quickly open up an example that I have of this, because I said you need broccoli writer, but it's not the right thing. Git open source Empress RFC process cat.
We've also got another comment here from Ed.
Broccoli file
take
creator.
A look at.
Ooh. So the thing that I said, it's not broccoli writer, because that's something else. That's something like low level in broccoli. It's actually broccoli file creator that I was looking for, which is a way for you to create a tree that has a particular file, has certain contents in it. So if they wanted to create public settings.json that will be included, they would use the broccoli file creator. And we'll do a demo of that as well.
Hey, Chris.
So I'm having a look at Edward's. Yes, I can hear you. Hello.
Oh, good. Okay, so you did look at it. I wasn't sure. I think my audio dropped while I was npm installing all the things for Corber. So. Anyway, carry on.
So this is the thing. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
So this is the thing, that same code sample that was included in the chat. Oh, look, Nick has joined us as well. Okay, so tree for public. Oh yeah, broccoli file creator, that's the one we were talking about. So we do want to include the super stuff. Trees.push. Oh, if there's one included, we'll include it. Right, okay. Right file, the settings file, whatever your settings are. Perfect. I want to actually, instead of just like looking at this as the answer, which it is, thank you very much, Ed, for that, I want to actually walk people through what it means, because some of the stuff in this question may seem a little bit odd. So it's like, oh, that's the Corber one that you're looking at, the in-repo add-on. I'm not sure if a lot of people have much experience with like in-repo add-ons. So I want to quickly do that as a demo here, and then we can kind of show people what that looks like. Ember.js in-repo add-on settings file. I think that's the right thing. So people who are familiar with Ember would know all about Ember Generate. So Ember.js is just as short for Ember Generate. And this is now like an add-on that isn't like a public npm, so you don't need to publish this anywhere. It's kind of included in your build system automatically for you. It kind of exists in the same file structure as a normal add-on, and it also, in your package.json, it kind of adds it here in the paths, which is kind of fun. Now, where's the Ed's perfect code? Nice. So I'm going to add this in here. Tree for public. Cool. So just to keep things similar at least. So save settings file. I don't even know what this .settings is. Settings file. Let's have a look, see.
Or do you think settings is something standard? It's not just something that's
so
defined elsewhere, like maybe they just cut this, snip it down.
Yeah.
Or are you thinking settings is actually a thing that's available?
Yeah, I think settings might be something that's available, so I'm going to do a quick console.log. Oh, why am I doing this? .settings. Yeah, Ed's saying it's probably custom to their to their add-on. But yeah, it could be. Settings. The difference that I would say, so the way that it's written in their code here, this .save settings file, and then it's like trees.push a funnel with that file in it. Dest dir data. That's interesting. Instead of this thing, like saving the settings file, it should really be, get settings data, and it should return setting 1 face.
Can you zoom in just a little?
I can. Thank you very much.
Compression and
Keep
everything
forgetting to do that.
Great, thank you.
Setting 2 my. So the idea here is that instead of it being save settings file, I've changed it around to, instead of it being like go and write this on disk, because this is probably what's causing the issue. It's now get settings data. So it's going to respond with the data formatted in whatever way this person needs, and then we'll we get that data, and then we pass that data into this write file thing. Now, write file is a Broccoli plugin, which we saw Ed include here. Write file. It's a Broccoli file creator, which is going to complain at me. Ooh, it's not complaining. Huh. Interesting. It's not installed, npm installed, so when I run this it won't work. I'll need to do that. And then we need merge trees, which is let merge trees equal require Broccoli merge trees. Okay.
Right file.
Just find but not use. Oh, it's this .get settings data. Yeah, cool. So that's kind of like a kind of basic example of what we're trying to do here. I'm going to try and run this, and as Ed says, this might actually work, because even though file creator isn't a direct dependency of this app right now, it could be a dependency of something else. And if you look up something that's like a dependency of a dependency, it'll work if it's there somewhere, which is, as Ed's saying, one of the many NPM design sins. I think, was his name Ryan Florence? I can't remember. One of the makers of Node, original makers of Node. He kind of did a talk recently about like 10 things I would change if I was writing Node fresh right now, and this is one of the things he talked about. So Ember build.
So quick question while that's building. If someone wanted to discover how to use write file, I think I would recommend searching Ember Observer. There's actually a code search for it.
Ooh.
Have you ever used it?
That's a good idea. I have never used this.
Oh my goodness, we should do that for sure. So if you go to Ember Observer, Ember Observer actually makes all of the code of different add-ons searchable up there in the top right-hand corner.
Oh, could make this bit bigger so that people can see.
If you type in write file there, we might get some interesting stuff. So if you're looking to see like how do people use different APIs and plugins and packages in their Ember apps, this is like one of the places I would look. However, I'm wondering like what's the discoverability path? Like how would someone initially learn that this is something that they want to use? Like where would you, I guess the CLI documentation kind of?
Well, this is the thing. Like, I know we talked about this recently, and we've been talking about improving the CLI docs, and you've done a massive amount to improve that with the cli.ember.js.com. cli.ember.js.com. But the challenge here is that Broccoli File Creator is just an add-on. You know, it's not something that every broccoli add-on will use. And it's this
Right.
thing where it's like people will go, how do I create a file with broccoli? Oh, there you go. The
Oh,
first
okay.
answer. But this is
That's
the
good.
thing. It's like,
And Ollie's tutorial as well. Okay, that's good.
well, yeah. So there is some cases here, but even that, like, I phrased it in a way that I know will give us a reasonable
That's true.
give a reasonable answer. But like, if the previous person, which they probably did, is like, I need a settings file in my data directory. You know what I mean? They're not saying, how do I create a file with broccoli? You know, even knowing that it's broccoli that's the one creating the file in this case can be a bit weird. So, as you say, Ollie's been doing some fantastic work on broccoli tutorials. So, kind of giving people a sense of how broccoli even works. I know he's done quite a few good talks on it recently, and he's doing a lot of work to make it much simpler, kind of giving people like base classes that they can use that are easier to conceptualize and all this sort of stuff. So like find Ollie, follow him on Twitter, you know. And another thing as well, don't hesitate to join the Ember community Discord and jump into the broccoli channel there and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, help me. And somebody will likely help you. Probably me, because I like
That's a
hanging
good
out
point.
there.
Cool.
Okay, so how did
All
our
right,
build
thank you.
go? Okay, so that may have done a thing. Oh, the settings file. Ooh, it worked. Object.
Perfect.
Whoops. Well, this is really up to your own design. The problem that I had here is I'm returning an object, so you probably want to stringify it. Stringify. I would spell that wrong. You probably want to stringify it. Ember build. And also, I think, just for the record, in their question, they're putting in dear data. So I would put data / the settings file. We'll do that for the next build, which is fine. Settings file. There we go. We now have a JSON in our the settings file.json. And to prove npm start that this is not kind of endlessly rebuilding. Let's run serve. Oh, there's our undefined. That's our this.settings. So as Ed was thinking, it is probably something very specific to their add-on. Localhost 4200. Whee! Huzzah. And then if we go to data, the settings file.json. Boom. With no endless building. Nice and fun. I think that covers all of the question.
Cool.
Do you think I missed anything?
I have installed Corber and all that. And the exciting thing is I get a different error than this person in that question. So
I found your question.
Oh, the Corber
Is this the
one?
question that you were looking at? The why isn't Corber building the APK?
Yeah, let me see. Oh, that's not great. What am I doing wrong here?
Oh, I see a difference between what you're doing and what they're doing. They're on Ubuntu 16.04.
Oh, yeah, that's true, but I still expected this to work on. I think it should be able to run Corber on a Mac. So there, I don't know if you want to move on over to this or not before I start talking about this question. Do you want to, should we switch gears, or do you want to wrap up anything on the one you were just working on?
No, I think I've covered everything in the video, like kind of showing it as an example. So I'll need to summarize it and write it as an actual answer to this question once we're done. So I don't think there's anything left to do other than actually answer the question. But yeah, I would like to know what you're experiencing with the Corber stuff.
Sure. Let me see. If I share my screen with you, is that something you're able to capture?
Yes, but
this?
I
'Cause we
will
didn't
have
set
to
this up
break it.
yet.
No, it's all right. It'll break a few things, so I just need to fix it.
Oh, no problem. I'll just break
Discord.
everything. That'll be
And then
alright.
I'm going to create a new... Oh, I know what to do. Studio mode. So everybody can still see me while I mess with things. So I'm going to create a new screen. Jen's screen. And I'm going to add in a window capture.
Android home environment variable. Although I have moved forward by one step. Let's see.
Okay, so do you want to share your screen?
Yes. I'll do that. Screen share.
Wow, that's a lot of pixels.
Entire screen. Share.
Okay.
Okay.
One last thing. Let me just... I just need to crop it. Sorry about this, folks. Crop and pan.
So while you're doing that, I'll jump back and I'll give a little quick overview. So I picked up this question about Corber. I find Corber to be extremely interesting because it's a tool that kind of, I think it's an understatement to say that it wraps Cordova, but because it's doing so much for you, it kind of it provides a CLI for creating applications that you can use as native apps and your web app. So you have one shared code base. If you want to build an Android app but still use Ember, this is one of the best ways that you can do it. And the creators of this library have kind of paved the way with a lot of the steps that need to be done to use different frameworks. Like you can see over here, you can use Ember, you can use Glimmer, Vue, React. And so that's pretty cool. So this person, their question over here, they did their app setup. They ran Corber init, and then they ran Corber start after making a couple configuration changes, and ended up in a problem where they got this message that says, no APK found. And their app isn't, building out an outputs folder in the first place. So I wanted to try this because I've always been very curious about Corber. So what I've done so far over here.
Can I just pause you for 1 second there?
Uh-huh.
I just need to do a transition, and we got feedback from the group that when I do this, it breaks your sound. So I'm just going to do it and then fix your sound. Okay, and then I need to add. How do I add a mixer? I need to do display gen sound. Oh, there we go. Loop back. Add sound audio input capture. Add existing loop back. Right. I don't know.
Good.
Okay, I'm going to do a slightly different way, but you should be able to talk now. I'm going to turn off my display capture.
All right, so some of the steps I've gone through here already. I generated a new Ember app with Ember new, and I called it Test Corber because that's what this question asker wrote for their app. Then I globally installed Corber. It provides some command line tools. I ran Corber init, and that gives you something that says like, oh, which platform do you want to use? So I picked Android to match this question. And then there's a couple steps here in the Corber docs that are specific to Ember. So it says that in config/environment.js, we need to set location type to hash, and we need to ensure that root URL or base URL do not have a leading slash. So over here, this is my config/environment.js in the new Ember app that I just made. I've got location type hash, and root URL in my case, I'm just running this locally, so I didn't put anything, but I don't really know if I take this out entirely and I do Corber start, make this bigger too.
What's the error that you're getting?
Well, so I
Just in
can
case people
get
can't see.
any number of errors, but this one says cannot read property ADB of undefined, which I suspect, although it's a different file than this person has mentioned over here, they said no APK found. It might be a symptom of the same problem. So
What happens if you just run ADB right now?
what do you mean by just like
So so just
what
ADB.
is it?
If you just type, well, this is the thing. I think that's like Android developer something.
Oh,
So I don't know if Corber has like prerequisites or something where it's like,
let's have
before
a
you
look.
do this, you need to
maybe I
install
didn't
all this other
go-
stuff.
I think you're correct. I didn't actually complete initialize Corber init flags. Ah, yes, there's an Android. I skipped over Android setup. Oh no, this is involved.
Yeah, so this is the thing that like I think Corber is fantastic, and like anything Cordova and all this sort of stuff is really quite useful. The challenge that I have with it is that you still have to have the thing installed. So you need to have Java installed because Android Studio requires it, all this sort of stuff, and it's like it's not a pretty installation process.
Oh no.
And even when you do install it, like there's so many checkboxes and all this stuff that you have to follow.
Oh no.
That it's very, very weird.
Oh, I didn't go deep enough down this rabbit hole.
Well, this is the thing. We've been spoiled for so long with like Node or whatever. It's like,
You're right.
npm install and then you're done. You know?
Yeah, my expectation is that I can just and at most I need to brew install something since I'm on a Mac.
Yeah.
Well.
So what do we want to do? Do we want to go all the way down this rabbit hole?
Well, no,
Or
I
do
don't
we
think
wanna-
we should go all the way down this rabbit hole because we could end up spending a very long time sitting here watching for my installations to run. So I think, look, I've got to install Java.
Oh God, yeah.
I don't know if I want. I don't know if I want to.
let's
I'm a
not,
JavaScript developer. Like, I'm
Yeah.
loving. I'm loving that I can do all my typing with TypeScript, and working in Java is a distant memory.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we should pick something else. Do you want to go back to that one about preloading images?
Yeah, sure thing.
Or I can see if there's also anything new. I'll stop my screen share. You have to undo all of your
before
hard
you
work.
do
Sorry.
that, let me do this. So let me know when you've stopped your screen share, and I will turn your camera back on.
Oh, if I can figure out how to stop my screen share.
All of Discord and
Stop
then
sharing your
Discord.
screen. Did it work?
No, I think you need to turn your camera off and on again, because that's how it works. As in, like, push the turn on your camera button once more.
Okay. Good?
Ah, there you go. All of Discord display. All of Discord, not all of Discord. Discord. There we go. Aha! Magic. I don't know if anybody listening's ever tried doing live streaming, but the software you use is called OBS, and it is mind-bogglingly difficult. Like, I have no idea why it's so complicated to use.
But it's free.
It's free, and it's very powerful. Like, don't get me wrong, it's one of these things where once you figure it all out, you can do a lot, but my word, you have to figure out a lot of stuff.
Too bad it would be very hard to do a live stream on setting up your live stream. You don't have to just do a screen recording. You might have done a screen recording back in the day when I was doing one of these
when we
weeks
started, yeah.
without you. Yeah, Ashlyn and I did a live stream together, and I was very concerned about being able to set up OBS, but I think you made a video, so maybe I'll dig that up. Anyway.
I think it's a secret unlisted YouTube video, so
Gotcha.
like you have to ask people to figure out what the secret URL is.
All right.
Okay.
So, how to force Ember.js to fully load all routes before it renders the index route.
Okay, so this is a relatively interesting question because, like, I think we came across one of these last week as well, where we had a question that was like, it was tagged with Ember, the person is clearly using Ember, but it turns out that a lot of the issues that this person's having and the actual solution that we're going to propose are neither Ember related. So it's like, it's not an Ember thing to fix, if that makes sense. There is an answer to this, which is kind of, how do I put this? It's the correct answer, because I'll show the demo of the app now in a second. But essentially, the person's app is taking a long time to load because there are heavy images on it. Or when you're navigating between routes, the routes seem like they're loading slowly because the images are loading, if that makes sense. And I think the images are quite big. So let's have a look, first of all. So the first thing I notice is that actually the home link doesn't work if you refresh it. We'll get to that in a second. But if we look at our network thing here, of course it doesn't work. And let's clear this, go to here. So, what have we got? All things. We've got image. Oh, it looks like they've actually improved the loading time. So I think in the answer, the person who's answering saying that the images are Ember.js is big. Oh, interesting. Is that true? 1.1 megabytes. Ember.js. Oh, it's they're cached. How do I do this? I need to hard refresh. We're in a slight problem because it doesn't. It's doing a redirect for us, so we're not actually able to do a proper hard refresh. So I'm going to do it in incognito. We'll figure it out eventually.
I'm still looking at, meanwhile, trying to comprehend setting up my Android development environment.
Wow. Here we go.
This is an adventure.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, let me see. Yes, I can.
So the thing that the person answering is saying is that the Ember.js is actually really big. It's 1.1 megabytes. Now, I have a sneaking suspicion. Let me go here. So where's the open in new tab? Yep, it's not minified. So this is something that I fell under quite a few times when I was like beginning an Ember developer. And when Ember CLI first came out, I remember deploying something that was the development build.
Mm-hmm.
So they haven't. Yeah, there we go. Ed has mentioned it as well. Like the development build is like way bigger than it needs to be.
Oh, they didn't run any of the minification, and it's got everything
Yeah.
in it, right?
So what they've done is they've done Ember build instead of Ember build environment production, and then they've deployed the Ember build side of things. And
Well, I'm glad
like,
we took a look at this then.
well, yeah, it's an easy mistake to make. It's good that there are some vendors out there. I don't know. Like he's saying, it's hosted on Surge.sh. I don't know what Surge.sh is, but one thing I know is that I do a lot of deployment on Netlify, and if you add an Ember app on Netlify, it knows to do it with build production, so that you don't get into this problem. It's not something. It's an easy mistake to make, and it's such an easy mistake to make for like non-Ember people to know not to like build in production, that a lot of the times when you see comparisons between Ember and React and Vue and whatever, when they're trying to like show the benchmarks, they benchmark that there's been cases where the benchmark Ember version was the development build, so it's like 1,000 times slower because it's got all this debug stuff in it.
So, side note, I am currently attempting to download the SDK, and in order to download this SDK, I have to create an Oracle account.
Oh no, have they done that now?
Yeah! I don't like it.
Oh, that's painful.
I don't like it. Alright. Just had to share that while you're over here thinking about development builds. But yeah, it's also, I think, that I would say that just to add to what you were saying earlier, that it's easy to forget to add that production flag that does all of the extra optimization and leaves out the unnecessary pieces. One of the other failure modes that I think happens a lot when people are first developing with Ember is they will never build for production until it's time to deploy. So, for example, I use Ember CLI deploy, and I could type Ember deploy and then my app name or whatever, and it would automatically build my app for production. But if that was the first time that I had run that command, occasionally I ran into issues and kind of learned to always test things out ahead of time. And the issues that I ran into were nothing major. It was usually that I had included some JavaScript files in my app, like in public or vendor or something, that were already minified, and Ember would try to build and try to minify them again. And sometimes that would fail because it would run out of memory, or something like if you minified a minified file, it just doesn't go well sometimes. And it's a very easy fix. You just, in your CLI build options, you say, don't minify this already minified file. It's a configuration that you can make, but it is sort of one of the gotchas. Is when you build something for production the first time, you might discover that you have to make some adjustments if you've pulled in third-party libraries.
Yeah, this is often kind of if you're doing something kind of expert, like pulling in, and maybe it's not necessarily expert, maybe it's intermediate, but if you're pulling in like other people's libraries, other people's code into your Ember app, you kind of have to be aware how like their build system and your build system are interacting. And it can cause problems. I remember, I don't know if this was a recent thing, but I think there was some weirdness with like minification where it would change a require statement and a whole section of your app wouldn't be able to build. I don't know if that was actually a bug in...
Ooh.
Yeah, there's some weird things like that happen. But again, my go-to whenever anything like that happens, I don't really know what's going on, so I go into the Ember community Discord and say, what's up? Has anybody else had this issue? What do you think? Okay, while we were talking about that, I installed this Surge thingy. And I logged in.
So I installed, so you know how I was grumpy because I didn't want to create an Oracle account.
Yeah.
So part of the reason I didn't want to create an Oracle account is it didn't just ask me for a username or email and password. It asked for email, password, name, street address, and phone number. But they didn't do any form validation. And so I filled in the required fields with, NA, not applicable, and it took it. So I don't even know if I should say this aloud. Maybe it'll come back around to them and they'll figure it out and change it.
No.
But anyway, that's a bit too much, I feel.
Yeah, I think... Yeah.
Anyway.
I try to avoid Java as much as possible now.
This is why I love... it's a moment like this that makes me really appreciate open source and some of the norms that have formed in the JavaScript ecosystem, because there are still things that you do have to create accounts to download. I noticed that that's the case for Docker. I didn't think it was the case before, but it's been relatively rare in my development experience for the past few years that I've needed to register or sign up in order to download a tool that I use in my daily development job. So anyway.
Yeah. Again, it's us being spoiled, isn't it?
So spoiled. Absolutely.
So, here's my result. I just did our sandbox and I put it onto Surge. It created a new thing for me. I'm not 100% sure why. A bit strange. But there's a few things that are wrong. So first of all, the vendor.js is in our case, it's over 0.5 MB, which is too much. And it took 5 seconds to download. So the simple difference here is to just do Ember build either prod, which is the same as doing environment equal production. I can never remember if it's an equal or a space. Let's try environment production, see what happens. Oh. And Ed is also, there we go, environment production, that's what we wanted to see. Ed is also pointing out an add-on. Let me bring that up here. Ember CLI deploy Surge. And this is what you were saying before, you use Ember CLI deploy. So Ember CLI deploy Surge would be a way to use the Ember CLI deploy pipeline to push properly to Surge, so that it makes sure that it will do it as a build, production build. Right. So now, vendor. Yeah. So there we go. There's a big difference. This is now 196 kilobytes gzipped. So if I now go into dist again and type surge, is it going to give me the same juvenile milk? Why is it not giving the same one? Did I spell that right? Okay, pushed. So now the difference here, instead of that being huge and taking 4.8 seconds to load, it's smaller, but it's still taking quite a long time. This is quite a slow. I've not used Surge before, but it seems significantly slower than something like Netlify, which is quite a quick like taking 2 seconds to download 200 kilobytes is weird. Maybe it's because I'm overloading my computer, but c'est la vie.
Or maybe, I mean, part of it could be that, like, if it's one of those freebie things. I mean, Netlify's freebie tier is really fast, but I know, like, for example, Heroku also has good freebie hosting of apps, but the catch is that they do take a moment to spin up if you haven't looked at them in quite a while. And I wonder if maybe that's just part of the freebie tier of Surge, is like, you know, that's its trade-off, is it's slow. Or it's because we're streaming at the same time.
Could be. I'm just, this is one of the apps that I streamed building with Mel Sumner a while ago. It is definitely hosted on Netlify.
Oh,
Where
the
have we got?
time zone.
Ember.js. Yeah, it's fun. Oh, I added a new feature to it yesterday.
Yeah?
So, similar
Did you
kind of
add-
download, less than a second. So it's like more than 3 times faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, and that's a free thing as well. This is using the free tier.
Yep.
Which is, so it kind of, it's one of these things where, you know, the question that we're answering here, the specific, you know, my app is running slowly. It's one of those always open-ended questions. There's like 100 different things that you could say to make this run faster. The person who answered it, and the app was the answer was accepted. Like they focused on images. Very valid. Like, if you want your website to be snappy, do that. Make sure that you have all of your images well optimized. Also, make sure you're doing a production build. Make your files as small as possible. Make sure that, as you say, you know, have a look, compare some of the free hosting things if you don't want to pay for them. Heroku is very good, but as you say, it has trade-offs. Maybe the first request in a long time will be slow. I particularly like things like Netlify because it's not a server running somewhere. It's just files in a CDN. Like, it's still a server. It's, you know, it's still somebody else's server, but it's static. You can think of it as much more static. The other thing that I was going to say, looking at this project, well, first of all, another thing to consider as well. I don't know how you do this with Surge, but the reason why this is showing as 404 not found every time that we load it, and then we have to go back to home, and then it goes back to home, is because you need to set the index.html as being the, like, 404 response. No matter where you go in the app, it should always serve the same index.html, and it's the app's job to decide what it renders.
Wait, I lost you there.
So
Can you restate
have
that?
a look at what I'm doing. So I'm
Yes.
going to go home. I'm getting rid of home and hitting enter. So it loads the app and redirects me to home.
Yeah.
And then I refresh. It doesn't exist.
Oh. And
That's
why?
because what web servers tend to do in this situation, what they want to serve me is either home/index.html or home.html. But neither of those two exist with an Ember app. The thing that exists with an Ember app is the single index HTML, and then the Ember app is the thing that decides what to render on a particular route.
Right. So it's never hitting the Ember app. It's just looking for an HTML page. So then how is this, like, that makes sense to me now. How does that get overcome?
So again, I'm not an advocate for Netlify. I don't work for Netlify, but I only know how to solve this with Netlify because I've been spending a lot of time with them. Netlify single page app. They have a thing in there. Redirects single page app. So it's this thing here: history, push state, and single page apps. So essentially what it's saying is, no matter what URL you go to, always serve index.html.
That's, you know, I've realized I never really had to think about this because I always just used when I deployed my Ember apps to S3, I used CLI deploy tools, which presumably take care of whatever configuration is needed there. And when I deployed to Netlify, I've used tools that other people set up. And when I deployed to Heroku, they have a build pack that you can follow. That means you don't do any configuration. I think you just set up Heroku and you like init, and then you deploy to an endpoint that you've set up by clicking a button. So that's interesting.
And I think if you crack open that build pack, you'll see like a custom 404 page in some sort of configuration somewhere that's like, oh, it's in the index HTML. It's in there somewhere. It just needs to be done, essentially.
Interesting.
So that's another thing that this person should look at improving. But the thing that I wanted to kind of leave at, and the thing that I said just before this call to you, Jen, was this idea that when you change the page, it kind of takes a while to load that image. But then you go back, it's fine, you know?
Yep.
There is a way to improve this. Like, it'll add initial loading time, but it might be what this person is, like, based on their question, based on the way that they've phrased the question about it, loading all routes at once. Like, this is the thing. They don't want there to be this kind of like, go to a page, it's kind of blank and it's loading the images. There's a trick that you can do to preload these images as soon as you load the app. Now, we're currently using that on the Ember.js website. I think I learned this one from my boss, Marco, the owner of Simplabs. Where is it? He did a great talk. I think it was last year at Emberfest, although I think I saw like a preview of it just beforehand as well. He gave a great talk about like speeding up your Ember apps using kind of like not Ember specific tools, but like things like this. Link preload. So you can say, so in this particular case, the reason why we have this preloading fonts is because this font won't render unless that has been downloaded. So if you look at it, and you do this, well, I'm pretty sure it'll show this here, that it'll load the Ember.js.com, this is the HTML that has that link reload thing, and then the very next thing that it loads is all the fonts before it loads the app, before it loads anything else. So it's like you're telling your application to load these things ahead of time. So this person could very easily add one of these for each of the known locations of the images that he wants to like show up really quick, so that as soon as you hit the application, it downloads all of the images, and then you don't get this like slow. It like pre-warms the cache essentially, so that when you go to that page, it'll go, oh, I know about that image already, and just use it instead of downloading it again. But yeah, lots of tricks. But you know, it's an endless question. You can always improve. There's a million ways to make apps faster.
Very cool.
So I
Side
think
note,
we covered all of that question.
I have finished downloading this JavaScript development kit. Hooray. And I'm installing it. But I think maybe what we'll have to do is you should ask me next week how it went, and that way I'll make sure that I actually finish this off. Because now that I've traded all of my personal information for it, I need to make it worthwhile in some fashion.
Just get
You
your
know,
money's worth.
my home address of not applicable is now exposed.
This sending postal like sales marketing stuff
like-
to Null Island.
I'm probably gonna get advertisements for this for forever. Like, I remember the first couple of times when I first became a web developer and I'm looking up all of this AWS documentation, that all of the everything, like all the development internet services were all like, they're a new target. And everywhere I looked on the internet, it was advertising some sort of enterprise cloud things for various providers. And I thought it was hilarious. Like basically all my advertisements, it was like visiting an airport. So anyway, we'll come back around to Corber, and maybe someday I'll be able to help this person. The one thing that I think my takeaway is on this is like, I was trying to run it without having fully read the installation instructions. I just sort of looked at the quick start and missed the prerequisites part. And so, just sort of a reminder, I guess, for me to read through that stuff carefully, number one. And number two, there was some compatibility, there's some compatibility concerns. So Corber says that to install the Java SDK for version 8, and the latest is version 12. And I'm looking at this person's question. I think an immediate follow-up step that I'm going to say is, do you have the, it's JDK installed? Are you using version 8? Because I just kind of wonder if it's the same thing, in a different setting. Like maybe they just, like me, breezed right through the instructions and, noticed, install Java SDK, and they hit the install for the first one. So I will follow up with that as a comment, and we'll see how it goes later.
Cool. Well, best of luck to both of you. Sounds like it is a saga and a half to get this working.
It was a saga. I had to pledge my firstborn child, and the joke's on them. I don't have any kids, so they'll probably show up later.
Yeah, they don't forget this stuff. Okay, cool.
So anyway, thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thank you for joining. This is it's always a lot of fun. I love that we had a broccoli question as well, because I'm a little bit stoked about how awesome broccoli is. And it's any chance to talk about it, I leap at the opportunity.
Just love these vegetables. And thanks everyone for listening in and giving us some tips and things.
Yeah, and thanks especially for participating in the chat. I always love it when people are hanging out and chatting, because it just makes it more interesting to do things live like this. Cool.
All right, catch you next week.
Yeah, so next week, I can't remember which date exactly we've got. Is it same time? It is same time next week. So follow myself or Jen on Twitter, or follow the channel. There's probably like a button somewhere on the Twitch if you're watching it on Twitch. But yeah, hope to see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.